I'm John DeSando.
Cinema, 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 cinema. Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio. We'll watch the credits.
Cinema Classics is produced and hosted by John DeSando. Listen to shows Thursdays at 8:01 p.m. on WCBE 90.5 FM. And listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John
And
DeSando.
I'm Wayne Wahlberg Miller.
And this is Cinema Classics.
Oh boy.
And this is, well, really, we're broadcasting in February, but it really is a January film. Now,
Yeah.
you've got to be on guard when you
Yeah.
when we review any movie that comes out in January, because unless it's Silence of the Lambs,
Yeah. They dump things there in the dead zone, basically, of cinema releases in January. But this one was a keeper.
all right, so this is called Flight Risk.
Yes.
Cute title, actually.
Yes, it is.
It's
It is, because we've heard of the term flight risk.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's the passengers, basically, three passengers, two passengers and the pseudo pilot, on this one. And boy, is it a rock and roll movie.
Well, I was thinking that how fortunate it is to have you here with me, not only because you and I can like cheesy films anyway.
Yes.
But also that there's, am I right? Am I elevating it a little bit by saying there's a little bit of Hitchcock in this?
Definitely, very good point, because Hitchcock, one of his motifs in his movie, a lot of his movies, he liked playing on the fear of claustrophobia in closed sets. And in fact, in a few weeks, I'm going to be seeing his masterpiece, one of his masterpieces, Lifeboat.
Yeah.
But the entire movie takes place on the lifeboat. And this, the claustrophobia, and of course it got me thinking some of my favorite risky movies set on airplanes. Like, one of my favorites is Red Eye. And another where, we've got kind of a psychopathic killer on board.
Well, good. That's good. That sounds like a good podcast.
Yes, which
so let's do that. I also want to look at Wahlberg and mainly at Gibson.
Gibson.
Now, listen, but anyway, we'll talk about that then, because I find it intriguing that
Yes.
he is really, tell me, they couldn't have spent that much on this film.
No, in fact, it really, because I read several reviews, and some of them are very mixed. Some of them, though, said, hey, what do you expect? It's not a dull movie, even though, and they did talk about some of you mentioned it earlier, about a kind of cheesy special effects stock footage of a beautiful Alaskan wilderness.
Did you see the plane going across? It kicked me out.
Oh, and I got the biggest kick. It reminded me of the old silent Keystone Cop.
Yes.
At the end, when the plane's, they're landing the plane, and all these ambulances and police cars are just veering around, trying to catch up to them. I got a kick out of it, though. I thought it was great, and I got a pretty good cast too.
Well, yeah. Now this Michelle Dockery.
And she's been in several films, but she's more well known to American audiences for the PBS series Downton Abbey.
Yeah, Lady Mary.
Yes, one of the stars there. And here, because she did not look like, kind of an Edwardian era English heroine, but she looked a pretty, she had some rough years with her. She looked kind of tired.
She has the Sigourney Weaver role here.
Yes.
So she kicks butt, and she's good enough with fisticuffs to subdue the criminal played by Wahlberg.
Yeah, that's not giving anything away. Because one thing, I always like watching the trailers, but you and a number of our friends always say the trailers give away too much. And definitely, the basic outline of what's going to happen. There's no surprise.
Look at this. It's that kind of cheap movie.
Well,
It doesn't make any difference. We all know we're sitting in there.
And Wahlberg, my God, with his shaved top of his head.
Yeah.
This really, which gives him a very bizarre
Well,
look.
he's wearing a toupee and a bald cap.
Yeah.
I mean, like compounding, hiding his baldness.
Yeah, and there's and now one thing you got to hand it. Gibson sometimes, as a director, could instill humor in his movies. But the one time when they're fighting away, and I think the guy, and basically he's an accountant for the mob, and he's all turned
Topher
states
Grace.
Yeah, which did not look. I did not recognize him at first. And of
Yeah.
course, he's been in a number of movies, but American audiences would recognize him for the TV sitcom, The 70s Show.
Okay.
And here with the glasses
Yeah.
and everything. But I think he does a great job playing the dweeb, but the one, they're fighting, and it lands in his lap, not only the ball cap, but this hairpiece, this toupee, that he kind of looks at like, oh my God, like a giant rat.
Wahlberg is enjoying himself.
Oh
And
my.
it's against the type that he usually plays, which is the all-American boy,
Exactly.
the working class guy.
And I know we'll get into this more during the podcast, but I did a lot of research. His movies, Gibson's movies, thrillers on planes movies and everything. And of course, he usually plays, like in Patriots Day, where he played a Boston cop, during that bombing there, lone survivor, that he was like, I believe a Navy SEAL, and a lot of comedies like Ted,
Yeah.
and family films with family in the
All
title.
right, well, no, let's not get into it. Let's do it in the
I know,
podcast. I know you
but
can't wait to get there.
I remember seeing him, though, one of his very first movies, 1996, called Fear, that he played a psychopathic teenager.
Yeah. So now back to our plane
Yes.
and the silliness that comes from it. And I think you're right. Initially, I was saying, what a piece of junk and so on. Then I began to say, it really did have some possibilities that, you look at, Gibson won the Oscar for directing Braveheart.
Exactly.
This is no piker when it comes to
No, it
direct.
isn't.
So
No.
he must have had something in mind for doing this. I mean, this is really a low-rent movie for him.
Well, and he's a controversial guy, definitely, and some of his racist remarks, anti-Semitic and stuff like that. But he kind of dropped out of making some movies.
Well, yeah, again, let's get to that podcast.
I know,
Let's look at the art of this movie.
I'm chomping at the bit.
I know we could.
But he knows how to instill humor as well as provide the thrills.
Yes.
And he knows, and I think it's competently directed. One of the reviews I read about it is that if there's any fault, it's really with the screenplay, not so much Gibson's direction.
Well, yeah, Gibson's smart enough to know, for instance, that there's no way that that our lady hero would be neglecting him in the back of the plane.
Yeah. As you see, as they're trying to figure out how to land the plane, her and the accountant character played by Topher Grace, but you could see in the background, he's thinking, pop a cap up his butt, he was trying to kill you. He'd kill you, you got a chance somehow to subdue him better, as he's kind of like struggling to get out of his restraints and everything.
Well, as the title would tell you, there's flight risk.
Yes.
And for her, there's all kinds of risks. Now, however, I have to give it to Gibson and the crew. It is probably more distracting to try to fly a plane when you know nothing about it.
Yes.
Than even to keep watching this guy that you've tied up in the back.
Because she's thinking, okay, she's got the better of him once at least, and so she has to concentrate and listen in, to some pilot at ground control, to try to talk her into what to do to land this plane.
Yes, right. Yeah.
And so she's paying attention to that because they could crash into a mountain. And it reminded me of some other film. Was it with Liam Neeson, or there's one with Anthony?
It probably was.
Yeah,
With Liam Neeson.
The plane crashes in the wilderness or whatever.
Well, I thought they were. That was another cute turn.
Yes,
they went through some snowstorm.
Yeah.
It looked like they were going to crash.
Really, trimming the tops of the little trees as flying so low level, and looming mountains that she had to pull back on the throttle to jump, basically hop over the mountaintop.
Well, and there's all kinds of complications. See, not all kinds, but there are a few complications, like the traditional trope here, which is that there's a mole somewhere that's telling people about where they are, or trying to get at her.
Yes,
from her
yes.
own place.
Basically, it's kind of like but there is, and as part of the U.S. Marshal Service
Right.
is being paid off by the mob to do away with this turncoat accountant.
Well, I just thought maybe it was some assistant director who couldn't stand her trying to do an American
Yeah,
accent.
it was some, but there's so many movies, like, for example, the movie Trap that we saw, the M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, yes, I like that one.
That I really liked it too, and I just rented got the DVD recently from the library.
All right, Wayne Miller.
Yes,
The film is Flight Risk.
yes.
Not like the risk that people are taking by watching us.
This
gobbling
is
away.
review risk.
What's your advice about Flight Risk?
I would recommend it, especially in the doldrums of a low batch of movies possibly coming out. This is a good one.
Listen,
Let's keep you on your toes and the edge of your seat, and an enjoyable evening movie.
And I think we're probably the best couple of critics ever around who will support mediocre to poor films. When we find that we ourselves are laughing, granted there's nobody else in the audience, but we're laughing as we're watching the movie.
We hoot and holler to the.
So we have a good time because we
Yes,
like
we
movies.
do. As long as we don't get kicked out by the teenage assistant managers for being too loud.
Soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio. We'll watch the credits from up high and low. Cinema classics on NPR.